Lin Ran is a medical student. He studies well. Everyone at the university knows him as a handsome, excellent student who recently received a good scholarship and dreams of becoming the best doctor. However, Lin himself suspects neurosis. A certain system appears in front of him, which only he can see. The hero suspects that a recent breakdown is to blame, so he needs to undergo a psychological test. However, the test results said that he was fine. A little later, the system reappeared in front of him. She suggested that Lin receive a certain gift, and the man agreed. Thus, he opened the teaching of medicine in this system. Lin understood that although the system had helped him achieve some victories, it would not help him become a better doctor. There were many factors that he needed to deal with on his own, such as competition among his peers, or a problem with patients. Honing his skills in medicine was a passion for Lin. However, he knew that he was still far from his goal of becoming the best doctor in the world. He needed to practice and work a lot to achieve what he wanted. It was an ordinary day. Lin was riding the subway to the university and was thinking about whether there was a method that could prove the existence of his system. Maybe he should just click on it and see for himself. However, this method did not inspire confidence in him. Lin believed only in science. He came to Manhwa Hospital to undergo an examination and proved that this system was just a figment of his imagination. Lin went through many tests and examinations and underwent tests, but everything was normal with his body. Now he had to return to the university to pick up the results of the mental test. On his way to the university, Lin met 108 people, but no one paid attention to his system. It was obvious to him that only he could see her. He suspected his recent breakdown and mental problems, so he definitely needed to get diagnosed. Lin knocked on the office where the test results were kept. A young girl with glasses looked out of the door. She was clearly unhappy with being disturbed. However, when she saw Lin, she immediately changed her anger to mercy and greeted him. The hero said that he was looking for the headman to borrow equipment. Then the girl let Lin inside the office and asked how his health was going. She heard that he went for a CT scan and MRI, so she decided to ask what was the matter. Lin said he was just writing a report, so he went there. The head woman said that she had already looked at the results of his tomography, and there were no problems with the hero's health. Lin tense up. Everyone says he's fine, but he knows he's not. Then he drew attention to the girl's computer. Programs were installed there that could be used to diagnose schizophrenia. Looking at the test results, the girl said that Lin was fine. Then she decided to leave the equipment at his disposal and leave the office. When Lin was alone, he took the test results sheets. He decided to use the computer to do the calculations right away and see if he had any problems. He wondered what kind of gift package he would receive if it turned out that he was not sick. Soon the calculations were ready. As it turned out, Lin was absolutely mentally healthy, and this means that his system is real. So he decided it was worth accepting the gift. As it turned out, the system gave him mastery in 6 methods of suturing. Lin considered this a rather meager reward, since suturing was just stitching. However, the system said that it could not give him another gift because it could only teach medical skills. Thus, she could only give Lin's skill in suturing, but the hero did not really like such a gift. However, the hero conducted a Turing test on the system and was sure that it was not just any person sitting behind it. The system's responses were contrary to the man-machine rule. Lin decided that in this case he was an example of a gift for suturing. He decided to practice on a banana peel. Lin felt that his hands were more dexterous than before. At the lectures, they said that the seams should be even. Then there will be no new scars on the skin. When Lin touched the banana, he felt knowledge appear in his mind. He just moved his wrist, but the needle moved very smoothly. Soon, the seams were applied. The distance between them and the knots were the same. The work was done perfectly. Lin realized that the system had many gifts in store for him, and skill in suturing was just one of them. Soon, the day of internship for medical university students arrived. Lin stood in the company of his dorm neighbors, Charlie and Vincent. Vincent asked the hero why he was so taciturn today, and then Lin said that someone was coming here. They were the director of Yunhua Hospital, Dennis, and the famous hospital surgeon, Connor. Dennis said that this is the first day of internship for the students in the practice room, and what happens next is up to them. Lin, the head of the home clinic, noted that Yunhua's practice room should be more interesting than his home clinic. Dennis announced that Connor, the most famous and capable doctor in Yunhua, would be working with the students today. Connor said being a surgeon requires many skills, and one of the most important ones is suturing. Hearing this, Lin immediately perked up. Connor said students may now forget everything they were taught at university. In their surgical room, every new doctor wants to try himself at the operating table. All this will be in the practice room. And to get there, students will need to stitch the tails of 10 white mice. The students were immediately excited. They were very excited, but still wanted to try their hand at suturing. Connor said that these mice have very thin tails, so the task will be incredibly difficult. To sew the tail, the blood needs to flow normally. It definitely cannot be done with one hand. However, this did not scare the students. They all wanted to try the operation themselves. Charlie was confident because they had already practiced stitching at university. Then Connor decided to choose one of the students, a boy named Chris. The student was seated in front of a microscope, and everything necessary for the operation was prepared. Connor chuckled. Chris was very tense. His hands were shaking. The doctor told him to work faster and finally insert the needle. Chris wasn't careful enough and ended up damaging a vessel in his tail. Connor chuckled again. Now the students realized that suturing was not such a simple thing. Lin thought about it. The diameter of the blood vessel in the white rat's tail was 0.5 millimeter, and it was not as easy to work with as a banana peel. Connor asked who else wanted to try stitching the rat's tail. Without waiting for an answer, he pointed his finger at Lin, calling him to him. Chris was depressed after the failure, and the other students didn't really expect Lin to do better. Dennis said that Dr. Connor will demonstrate his skills to everyone. Students should pay attention to his methods. Soon, Lin put on a mask and gloves and announced that he was ready to begin the operation. Connor said they usually cut it into 60 or 80 pieces, but today the situation is different, so there are fewer pieces. The doctor was going to use the simple and popular method of stitching. Lin drew attention to the technique of execution after sewing the tail. You need to put a small suture. 6 loops will be enough to ensure normal blood circulation and eliminate bleeding. We also had to make sure that there were no cavities or scars left. Connor looked at the hero with suspicion. In his opinion, all the trainees think that theoretical knowledge will be enough for them, and they behave too proudly. He then asked Lin if he knew what stitching method had just been demonstrated, and the hero answered, it was an interrupted stitch. The doctor noted that this student was clearly a good student, and then asked him to go to the table to show everyone his skills. Lin was at a loss whether the doctor had already demonstrated everything. He wanted to see something much more interesting. However, he also liked this turn of events because he had never performed such an operation before a famous surgeon, and now he could not miss this chance. Connor carefully watched how Lin worked. The needle went in well, and his hands did not tremble. Apparently, this was not the first time he had done something like this. There was no feeling that the needle was resisting. It seemed to be gliding across the ice, as if it was working in unison with Lin's mind. As it turned out, the hero had just broken his record for stitching speed. Moreover, all the seams were perfectly even. Everything was much better than during his practice at the university. Lin's fellow students looked at the sewn tail of the rat in surprise. They were surprised at how quickly the man completed the operation. Dennis couldn't believe his eyes. Lin's stitching speed was faster than Dr. Connor's. Connor himself looked at the operating table in confusion. He did not believe that Lin was able to cope so quickly. Even the microsurgeons who work in this province could not overtake him in sewing speed, and this young man was just a trainee. Then Lin stood up from the table, took off his gloves, and announced that he had completed the operation, noting to himself that the masterful suture skills that the system had given him really did make the job easier. Connor looked nervously at the seams under the microscope. Everything was clean and beautiful, perfect spacing, neat stitches. He didn't want to admit it, but Lin's sewing was excellent. However, the doctor still did not believe in the reality of what was happening. Lin simply could not reach such a level as an intern, and then Connor asked him what hospital he had practiced at. The hero replied that he just sometimes works at his home clinic. Connor assumed that he works in some large clinic. However, Lin replied that the clinic was called Lower Kanavka. The doctor was shocked, because it was a very tiny establishment. He did not believe that Lin could come out of there with such a masterful skill in suturing. Soon, Dennis approached the hero. He noted that Lin John's stitching skills were quite good, and then asked which department he would like to go to. The rest of the students were shocked, because many hospitals are very strict towards newcomers, studying there as comparable to an apprentice in the Middle Ages. Most of them do not have the right to choose a department, but Lin was given such a chance. The hero became thoughtful, and then he suddenly heard a strange sound. It was that same system. She gave Lin a task to suture 10 patients, and as a reward, he would receive the skill of intermittent suturing. Lin was surprised that the system could now give him tasks. However, the reward for such a task was quite good. This stitching method is very good, often used, and very useful. Then the hero said that he wanted to go to the emergency room. Dennis noted to himself that this guy was really not an ordinary guy. Charlie and Vincent immediately ran up to their friend. They were quite surprised at how much Lin was taking a risk by choosing this department, because he could have chosen the hand surgery department. However, Lin thought it through the way he needed, because by entering the emergency department, he could complete the task in 10 days.